Take 5. Wrong Turn. The reboot. The remake. The disaster piece? This film was pretty divisively, appreciatedly disappreciated amongst fans and newcomers alike. I'm one of the newcomers. I have not seen a single one of the original films. I haven't. I just found this in like a bargain bin. And I thought, I like spoopy movies. Let's take a look at this thing. Well, spoopy or not, this film is about a group of teenagers who get lost hiking the Appalachian Trail. And one by one they die to a strange cult up in the wilderness, until the main character's father comes looking for her, and they get out safely. The end. The longer version of the summary is 3 couples go out to the Appalachian wilderness for a little bit of R&R to find themselves backpacking for a little camping trip. They're 3 couples. The main character and her boyfriend, a supporting character and her boyfriend, a bearded fellow and his boyfriend. The 6 of them go out into the Appalachian wilderness for a little R&R. And they end up getting into a little bit of hijinks when they take a wrong turn out into the wilderness and they get lost. Lost in the middle of a property that they didn't know they were trespassing on. Because, there were no signs. Nobody said, hey, this is our land. Would you kindly go back onto the trail? The film opens with the father of our main character searching for his daughter, played by Matthew Modine, whatever. Played by that guy who was in The Dark Knight Rises. And it was pretty interesting to me to see the difference. The last time I saw a film that Modine was in was The Dark Knight Rises. That was the last one I saw. I believe The Dark Knight Rises was 2011 to 2012, one of those types of years. And he looks fairly different. Just like about less than a 10-year difference, maybe 8 to 9 years. And a lot can happen in 8 to 9 years. But then you think, 12 years ago, Paul Rudd looked exactly the same as he does now. I guess some people age more gracefully than others, but Modine was great in this film. I have nothing bad to say about him, despite this being a Rant Files video. I have nothing bad to say about Modine's character. He is fine. He's perfectly fine in this film. The bulk of the problems I have in this film belong to her. And I believe that's Charlotte Vega. I think that's Charlotte Vega, the main character, the main heroine. And I feel she wasn't utilized to the best of her ability, if that makes sense. She was very incompetent in some places where it could have helped her to be a little bit more competent. In particularly a certain trial scene where it would have helped her to be a little bit more specific about certain things that she was trying to recall in defense of her friend. It would have helped her to be a little bit more eloquent in her verbiage, but she wasn't. She was barely able to get a single word out. And because of this incompetence, this ineptitude, one of her friends dies. But we'll get to that. First, we start with the 6 teenagers going out to the Appalachian wilderness. One of them decides to visit an old Civil War bunker. because he thinks there's one out there. And they get lost looking for it. While they're lost, discussing about their lostness, a giant log rolls down the hill that they proceed to run away from. And my first, I wouldn't say it's a problem, I'd just say it's a nitpick, is I can't tell you how many movies I've seen where the log is rolling down the hill and the person just runs directly down the hill as well as the log catches up to them. Normally, if the log's coming to you, you try to run diagonally. So you're still putting distance between yourself and the log, but you're also moving off to the side. So as the log is coming down, and you're right here, you're going there, and then it just harmlessly slides aside. That's normally what you would do when a log's rolling down towards you. And granted, you probably wouldn't have enough time to even do that if it's a long enough log, tall enough log. But at least you gotta do something, right? You gotta do what you can. You couldn't exactly go directly horizontal, maybe. You might have, actually, from watching the scene. You probably would have had enough time to do just run directly horizontal away from the log and let it roll harmlessly past. But, hey, movie's got a movie, teenager's got a teenager. They ran directly down. They started to trip and tumble. Almost all of them did. And one of them gets crushed immediately. He had not much in the way of character. I don't even remember his name. I don't know if anybody even mentioned his name. And if they did, I don't remember what it was. He didn't have too much in the way of the character because he died immediately. Don't mind me. I just needed a drink. And the fun keeps happening. After this little log scene, the next little piece of important information is they're still lost. They can't find the trail, the hiking trail. So, they have to pitch up camp because it's starting to storm and it's getting dark. And you don't want to get further lost in the middle of a dark storm in the night. So they pitch up their tents and they try to wait out the storm. In the middle of the night, our main heroine notices a shadow of a person creeping about outside the tent over a flash of lightning. Instead of waking up her friends to notify them of this, she just goes back to sleep. That's mistake number 2. Maybe number 3, actually. The first mistake was getting off the main trail. Actually, maybe mistake number 4. Mistake number 4 was choosing to go on a camping trip to begin with. Camping. Ugh. So, she wakes up the next morning and notices that her phone is gone. Her boyfriend notices that his phone is gone. The other dude notices that his phone is gone. And he also notices that his girl is gone, too. And the other dude, the non-bearded dude, who was the boyfriend of the other dude who got his face remodeled by the log that rolled down the hill, all their phones are missing. And our heroine, helpful as she is, decides now is a good time to let everybody know that she noticed somebody creeping about the camp last night, and that maybe he might have taken their phones. But she didn't let anybody know until after the fact, of course, because she's just so darn competent. She's just so apt. And so, without their phones, and without the other dude's girlfriend, they decide to go look for the said girlfriend. I'm going to call her the brunette from now on. They decided to go look for the brunette. I don't know, she might actually have black hair. Can't remember. Doesn't really matter. So they go looking for the brunette. And whilst looking for the brunette, the boyfriend of the brunette gets caught on yet another trap. A chain trap. Wraps around his ankle. Makes him fall down. And he's getting dragged away into a little dark hole. The other boyfriend, the boyfriend of the main character, is going like, I need to get something so that I can get down there and find him. like a flashlight or something, because, you know, I don't have one of those. I gotta go get some supplies, and maybe then I could go find it. And then the girlfriend's like, what? How long are you gonna spend looking for him? He could probably be a long way away by now. You don't know what's down there. You don't know how far that goes. Blah, 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 blah. She's basically saying, don't bother looking for him. Let's look for the girl instead, the brunette instead. So that's what they decided to do. They started to look for the brunette instead so they could go get some help and all that other stuff. Because, you know, they don't have their phones to phone any help and assistance or whatever, GPS, none of that. They don't have any of that. And that's going to be an important plot point in the future because you're going to meet some of these characters who aren't particularly fond of outsiders. And you're going to start questioning their logic. So just keep that in mind with the phone business for now. They don't have any phones, they can't get out. So they go searching for their friends, and they find this little cabin of sorts. The three decide to check out the cabin, and it's filled with old discarded phones. Their phones might actually be there, but they don't look. They don't decide to check to see if any of those phones work. Excuse me. It's a huge pile of phones ranging from smartphones to old flip phones. It's just a whole big pile of phones right there. It's just a whole big pile. But nobody decides to check them out. Nobody decides to check to see if any of them still have a battery so they can phone for assistance or anything like that. Nobody decides to check for that, of course, because if they did that, we might be able to shave an hour off the runtime. They don't even... They discuss some things, and you, the viewer, start to think, perhaps all of the people caught up in this little place are the previous owners of those phones, of all of these supplies. And they're all missing now. And maybe that's what's going to happen to these teenagers. So they leave the cabin, the barn, whatever, and they see one of their friends, the boyfriend of the brunette, being carried like a prized deer. His arms are tied to a log on one end, and his ankles are tied to the other end of the log. And two people in ghillie suits are carrying him in between them. Naturally, this image makes you think of something that's unnerving, because you are going to be quite perturbed, unnerved, weirded out at the image that you're seeing. And naturally, they get the impression that they want to do their friend harm, or they may have already done him some harm. So they decide to arm themselves with some of the equipment in this cabin, and go rush out to save their friend, because they truly believe that they're saving him from these people. So they get the two people in the ghillie suits to drop their friend, and they start speaking in tongues. I have no idea what the language is. If it even is a language, it might just be babbling. I don't know. But judging from their skull-faced little helmet or whatever, judging from that, and the ghillie suits, it looks very Celtic, at least to me. It looks very Celtic. So maybe it's got roots in that. So they start talking in English to the ghillie suits, saying, "What have you done with our friend? Blah, 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 blah." And the ghillie suits are speaking in tongues back. Nobody's understanding each other. So, of course, nothing gets done, yet they continue to speak to each other in the languages that neither the other understands. Instead of, playing charades or something. Oh, God. Their friend, the boyfriend of the brunette, manages to get free from his bindings and removes the sack from his head. Gets up, lifting the giant log in his hands, roaring in anger, and smashes one of the dudes in the ghillie suit's face in. Just smooshes it into red jello. Just smush, mush, mush. Needless to say, our heroine's pretty horrified at the incident, thinking, "You just committed murder." And the boyfriend of the brunette says, "This was self-defense. They were going to kill me. They killed my girlfriend." And on cue, the brunette comes out of the woods. She's perfectly fine. What a twist! So, now she says, "You killed him for nothing." For nothing, you say? Ooh, we've got ourselves a genius on our hands. The brilliant deduction. For nothing, you say? So what was that about the arms and the ankles being tied to a log with a sack over your face, being carried as if who knows where you might be being carried off to? Perhaps you're being carried to your death to be burned alive like Jack Sparrow was in Dead Man's Chest. That type of conclusion that you would come to in the heat of the moment would probably cause you to act just the way he did, and smush, smush, smush to red jello your captor's face in. The other one gets away, because they were all focused on the smushed jello on the floor. That the other one got away. They're very quiet. I guess they have to be, because, they're all hunters and all that stuff. Some time passes and they start panicking. They start running away in all sorts of different directions. The boyfriend of the brunette starts running off in a random direction, saying that the guys are following them, that they're all around them, and they need to get away. They need to get out, back to the Oregon Trail, or wherever the fuck they are. They need to get back to civilization. And as he's running, the brunette, the girlfriend, runs after him. As you do. Except she falls into a pitfall trap, and she gets shish kebabbed by a bunch of spikes at the bottom of the pitfall. The boyfriend leaves her there because clearly he couldn't get her out of there as he is. She's pretty far down there. He might need some rope to reach down there to get her out, So he leaves her there to go find rope, perhaps. Maybe he's going to go find her. You don't know. I don't know. Perhaps he's just being a dick. You don't know. I don't know. But the film so far has painted him to be pretty dickish. So maybe this is just more dickish behavior. But I like to be optimistic and think that maybe he's just actually going to find something to get her out of there with. Maybe a long log, or a piece of rope, or some twine to get down there safely, to get her safely out. Because, she's pretty haphazardly shish kebabbed, and you don't want to just tear those holes and make those holes bigger. It's pretty dangerous. She would need one of those medical choppers that airlift her out very, very carefully, so that she doesn't get punctured anymore. There's not much he could do, clearly. And the moment he leaves to go get help, one of the ghillie suit dudes show up, and he's got a bow and arrow. They're very primitive, and he shoots with his bow and arrow the brunette in the pitfall, putting her out of her pain. I guess you could say that might have been a mercy killing, or you might say that that's just part of the war. It's just battle, another battlefield death. Moida, another Moida, right? Moida. Well, when our remaining 4 teenagers get captured, they will end up being put on trial for murder. The murder of one of the ghillie suit guys. And this is very hypocritical. This is hilariously hypocritical. Because just because the boyfriend of the brunette was a little bit more hands-on in his approach to taking the ghillie suit man's life, that does not excuse the fact that their traps killed 2 of their group. And last time I checked, 2 is a bigger number than 1. So clearly, who is the bigger Moida? The hands-on approach with the log, with the face and the jello? Or the pitfall and the giant log down the hill, you know? So maybe you can mark off the pitfall as an unfortunate accident, as one of the characters, the other ghillie suit dude who was carrying the boyfriend of the brunette on the spit roast stick, explains. He says they're hunters, and they were searching for big game, and they noticed that this dude fell into one of their traps that was intended for one of the big game. They were going to fish him out and take him down the mountain to safety. Now, after just witnessing that cabin full of phones and discarded hiking gear, we can all assume that this guy is talking out of his ass. And he most likely is. But you get the impression that the chieftain, the chief, the head judge of this Moida trial, he doesn't seem to be in on this, privy to this information that the guy was being carried around like a spit roast. And this is the perfect prime opportunity for our protagonist to explain herself and what happened in explicit, excruciating detail. Because that's what you do in a trial. You explain in extreme, excruciating detail everything. Because if you leave just one thing out, that could be the difference between a guilty and a non-guilty. Just that one little piece of information that you just left out. That one little piece. That one little piece. But she didn't leave the little piece. She left the whole story out. She just said, oh, it was self-defense. Well, how was it self-defense? Why was it self-defense? You know, she's not backing up her claims. So, she's just cracking closed. She's clamming up. She's, we get it. I get it. She's terrified. She's afraid. She is, you know, this strange little society of Celtic wearing people in the medieval garb and all this stuff. This is all so scary to her. Of course, you're going to clam up a little bit. Some people babble nonstop when they're scared. Other people, they just shut down. And you could tell that she was shutting down. But she showed signs of being able to stand up for herself earlier in this flashback. Down and back in the town at the bottom of the mountain. She showed signs of being able to stand up for herself in face of adversity. Well, here's some adversity. Start speaking. Start being eloquent about what happened. Because the chieftain doesn't seem to be privy to all of these phones and the cabin full of all that crap. He might not even know all that stuff's in there. You get the impression that he probably doesn't know exactly how their buddy got murdered. And that maybe some people in this tribe are actually actively going out killing these people and making it look like unfortunate accidents. Maybe you get the feeling that some of these people in this tribe enjoy it a little bit too much, and that all of these traps that they say are intended for big game, just for the chieftain's sake, are actually intended for unfortunate teenagers hiking off on the wrong turn trail. But that's just food for thought. That's just my theory. That there's probably some people out there a little bit too particular to sadistic ways. So she fails to explain herself. She fails to even tell the story of what happened. And the boyfriend of the brunette dies. He's sentenced to death for killing, for Moida. And there's no justice for the girlfriend, the brunette. There's no justice for the bearded boyfriend of the non-bearded other boyfriend. There's no justice for them. She doesn't explain what happened to them. She doesn't explain that they're dead. She doesn't explain any of that. She doesn't explain what happened to the phones in the middle of the night. She doesn't explain what the log that rolled down the hill killing the bearded boy. She doesn't explain anything. She doesn't explain anything. She clams up and shuts down, and the boyfriend of the brunette dies. That could have been avoided. That could have been avoided. That's just me. I think that could have been avoided. So, after that, the chieftain sentenced the remaining 3 to darkness. Darkness. What this means is he takes a red-hot fire poker, pokes out your eyes, makes you blind, and then he throws you into some tunnel, cave system, and locks the door behind you, leaving you deaf, with no food, no way to fend for yourself, and just leaves you there. And we'll come back to this cave in a little bit, but I really found this part to be interesting. The cave part, at least. So now, we flash forward back to the present. The father's looking for his daughter, who has been missing for 6 weeks now. And he learns that they're up on the mountain somewhere. And the hotel lady, who told the teenagers to stay on the path and not go off into the wilderness, says that there's a village in the mountain called the Foundation. They're a bunch of people who decided to leave the civilized society because they've realized that the land was heading for civil war, and they didn't want to take part of it. They didn't want any part of it. So they just formed their own little community up the mountain and let the world go to hell below. Well, the world fixed itself, but they were still up on the mountain. They didn't come back down. And they're very territorial. They're very territorial, but they don't put up any signs saying that people should stay off their land. You know, maybe it's just me, but if I had a pretty big yard, and I saw some people camping on my property, my first reaction wouldn't be to set up traps all over my yard to kill them off, to ward off any trespassers. No. My first reaction would be a friendly hello. Be like, "Hi there, you're on my property. Would you happen to leave it a little bit, leave the property, go back onto the trail, and be on your way, and I could be on my way." And they'd be like, "Oh, well, I didn't know there was a community up here. We'll leave you be." But of course, we can't have that. If we had that, then we wouldn't have a movie now, would we? So, the boyfriend of the bearded man gets his eyes poked out, because, you know, we have to have a wharf effect. You have to have something happening. We have to have somebody having his eyes poked out just to see what the darkness means. So we have that demonstration with the least important character of the survivors. And now, our heroine starts to speak up. She starts to explain how she and her boyfriend are useful, and that just sending them out there blind and deaf and dumb might actually probably be not smart, not good, because they're pretty resourceful. They have resources. She says that her boyfriend is pretty strong. He could be a hunter. And she is healthy. She might be able to bear a child. So she offers herself, and she offers her boyfriend's strength, and says that they could join this community to avoid the death. And the chieftain buys into this, and he spares their lives, makes them join the community, and says that they can't really escape, even if they wanted to. If the traps of the mountain don't get them, then the members of this community will. So they're basically hostage civilians of the Foundation now. 6 weeks later. Excuse me. 6 weeks later, the father finds his way up to the village. He gets captured by the villagers and sentenced to darkness because of trespassing. He's clearly trespassing is a crime punishable by blindness. Okay, I guess I could say that maybe they don't actually own the land that they set their village on. They probably don't own the land, so they probably don't want anybody to know they're actually up there. So any actual eyewitnesses to their little community cannot be allowed to leave. So I guess that's the theory I have there, and that's probably why they sentence everybody to either death or darkness or join the community. Because they gotta keep it secret, they gotta keep a secret. So the father's sentenced to darkness come dawn. Because, they don't want to do it right away. I don't know. I guess he's tired. I guess the chieftain's tired. He sentences the father, played by Modine, to death in the morning because he doesn't want to do it right away. Because if he did it right away, the plot wouldn't be able to happen. So, in the middle of the night, the daughter, who had integrated herself as the chieftain's wife, decides to set her father free and escape with him. And that all of this acting that she was doing, it was just acting these past few weeks, just to stay alive, to survive. She knew that eventually somebody would come for her, and she'd be able to escape. And so that convenient plot stuff happens. Her boyfriend decides to stay behind because he's found a nice community where he feels he can belong. Good for him. So the daughter and the father escape. A lot of things happen. But they go through this tunnel because, the gate to the village is locked, so they have to find a secret way out. And the secret way out is through the very tunnel where they put all the people who live in the darkness. All the blind people. And as they're going through this tunnel, they have to take a fire torch, so they could see. And they see that there's a lot of people down here. A lot of blinded people, and they've all gone animalistic. They're cannibals. They're eating each other just to survive. And it's pretty... It's pretty... That's probably the best scene in the film. That little bit right there. And it's probably the closest that you get to the original Wrong Turn films that I haven't seen. But I hear it's a lot like The Hills Have Eyes, the original Wrong Turn movies, so I guess that's fun. So they escape, and the chieftain follows them, and so she has to kill the chieftain, and then the movie ends. I don't know what else to say. The protagonist is weak. The protagonist could have been a lot better. She could have been a lot better. But were she competent, this movie would have shaved about 40 to 50 minutes off the runtime, and we can't have that, can we? I think the term is plot-induced stupidity, plot-induced ineptitude, plot-induced incompetence. That's probably what the term is. And that's probably what I'm looking for here, is that she suffers from that because that type of action has to happen in order for the other events that they wrote to happen. Because this can't happen unless this happens. Chain of events, And they wrote themselves into a hole probably because they wrote things out of order. They wrote this cool little bit here, but this has to happen. But in order for this to happen, they have to think of another way for them to get here. So they go like, oh, so maybe this happens and she's not able to explain herself properly and blah 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 blah, and then this can happen. This part that they wrote first, and I don't know how this plot was written, but it just feels like there's a lot of plot-induced stupidity here, and there's a lot of things that are contrived that they write to happen just so that the next thing can happen, so that the next thing can happen, and it's just. This film feels like it could have just been a 20-minute movie. But you can't have a 20-minute movie. You gotta have movie, you know? Movie's got a movie. So teenagers gotta be stupid sometimes in order for something to happen. So that was Wrong Turn, the reboot, the remake. I haven't even seen the originals, and I can say that they're probably better than this. It was entertaining for a first watch. I could watch it from start to finish, but I questioned so much, and there was a lot of points where my suspension of disbelief was too. I couldn't. It was too strong. I couldn't suspend it too much because, you know, I was on the boyfriend of the brunette side for a lot of this. Like, I disagreed with the whole bigotry against the South being all, oh, these guys Confederate, blah, 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 blah. You know, I was against that type of behavior. But I thought that the bashing the dude's skull into jelly was kind of justified. If you woke up and you were tied to a log like a prized deer, you might be pretty angry about that. But that's just me. And I feel there's a lot of this that goes unresolved. There's a lot more to this community that they could have shown, that they could have taught you. And it's just, maybe they were saving it for a sequel that may or may not happen. If it does happen, then maybe we'll learn about it in that film. But we certainly didn't learn about it in this one. This is going into the Rant files, because I felt I had to talk about it. Usually when I want to talk about a film, I either really enjoy it, or there's some stuff I really gotta nitpick, you know. So this is going into the Rant files. Plot-induced ineptitude. You could have written some aptitude rather than ineptitude and still kept your padded runtime. You just needed to tweak some things around a little bit more. Maybe make it so that the chieftain was in on the whole disappearing act, and that even if she tried to explain herself, he wouldn't care, and he would still sentence you guys to all this crap. And that would have worked. But you know, movie's got a movie in its own way. I've been Marco. And remember, be imaginative. More so than this thing.